Pipeline. You guys gonna join us for a while?
Hi Luke, thanks for coming today, and I wanted to see if you could just tell us a little bit about the march and what the pipeline means for going through the town of Norfolk.
Yeah, absolutely. So today about approximately 120 people began the march over in Medway, and it's a 43-mile long trek that is taking place over 4 days. And the marchers, and will eventually number about 450 who will join us along the route, are demonstrating against Houston-based company Spectra Energy's proposal to build a new natural gas pipeline through this part of Massachusetts that will eventually cross into Norfolk here. And Spectra wants to bring new natural gas from Pennsylvania that is being extracted through a process known as hydraulic fracturing, which is commonly referred to as fracking, and bring that gas here into Massachusetts. And demonstrators are upset both with Spectra's proposal as well as Governor Baker's plan to add a tax to all Massachusetts utility ratepayers' bills to finance the construction of this new pipeline as well as other pipeline projects. And
so they're expecting ratepayers to pay for the cost of the pipeline?
Yeah, it's in a very controversial move. Last year, Governor Baker directed the Department of Public Utilities to approve this plan, which would, as I mentioned, add a fee to all electric ratepayers' proposal of ratepayers' bills to subsidize the construction of this pipeline, which is being built by a private company. So taxpayer money would be flowing to a company that isn't even based in Massachusetts. The proposal is very controversial, and its legality is in question. Late last year, the Attorney General released a report who by law represents electric ratepayers in all utility cases and is the chief legal officer, released a report that said that in order to meet its electric reliability needs, Massachusetts does not need to invest in new fossil fuel infrastructure. Instead, it can engage in better energy management as well as through replacing pipes and other sort of like retrofitting buildings in a way to conserve energy better and to use energy more efficiently. So the proposal in itself is in a lot of like legal jeopardy, and marchers here, many of whom come from local community groups that represent different towns and cities along the route, are upset with what the impacts of the pipeline will likely be at the local level.
Isn't there something that Spectra could do in terms of like making the existing pipelines more efficient so that there would be no shortage or need for this expansion?
Yeah, absolutely. So what the Attorney General referenced in the report and what many environmentalists and even other concerned community members would like the state and private companies to engage in instead is replacing pipes that run underneath the streets in Boston and other communities in and around Massachusetts that leak gas directly into the atmosphere. A lot of these pipes were constructed decades ago with pretty shoddy construction materials. A lot of them are copper, for example, and they're very porous, so they just release methane, natural gas, directly into the environment. And that's gas that's being wasted, that isn't being used to heat people's homes and to really generate electricity. So instead of building new natural gas pipelines, what a lot of politicians and the Attorney General have recommended instead is that the state engage in greater repairs of those pipes. And they have already, the state already has begun to do so, but to engage in that repair work at a faster pace and use that way to meet Massachusetts energy needs. What the marchers here today and the next few days are really upset about, though, is primarily that the pipeline, if it is built and approved by the state, will likely lower homeowners' property values. People don't tend to want to live next to a pipeline that is carrying highly flammable natural gas. So if you have a home that you own and all of a sudden a company wants to put a pipeline right through your backyard, if you try to sell that home, you're likely not going to be able to fetch the same value for which you bought it. And that upsets a lot of local property owners. In addition, people are upset about the risks that natural gas pipelines pose, both in terms of human health risks and in the risk of explosions. A pipeline that this same company, Spectra, is building in Massachusetts in West Roxbury, a neighborhood in Boston, runs by an active quarry site. And so people are understandably upset about Spectra's decision to build that pipeline, and it's a pipeline that is opposed by both senators from Massachusetts as well as the mayor of Boston, Martin Walsh, and a number of city council members, because if there isn't an explosion at the quarry that is strong enough to detonate the pipe, those explosions can wipe out people's homes and city blocks, and the same sort of threat exists here. And then from human health perspective, inhalation of the toxins that are present in natural gas, as well as different facilities that are along the pipeline, aren't good for anyone's health, particularly the health of the elderly and children. And so, a lot of the demonstrators here, they don't want to be living in communities that have pretty bad health risks and where they don't really see the benefit for them of allowing this pipeline to go through. Recently, a lot of pipeline projects have been canceled in the national level as well as here in Massachusetts. A major company, Kinder Morgan, canceled its pipeline this spring that would have brought natural gas from New York State up into Drake, which is north of Boston. And successful community opposition from different residents living along the pipeline eventually proved too powerful and too burdensome for the company to overcome.
And where were they planning to send the gas that was coming from these towns? Because I think Norfolk's not really going to be getting gas anytime soon.
Yeah, so Governor Baker suggests that, and supporters of this pipeline suggest that, Massachusetts does have high energy costs. And when we had the brutal winter 2 years ago, that necessitated a lot of homes needed a lot more heat to deal with the extreme cold and the snow, and so that drove up electricity costs at the time. And Governor Baker says that if we bring in this gas here into Massachusetts, increasing the supply will lower the price. There are two problems with that. The first is that in order to finance this construction, utility ratepayers are being taxed to do so. So some of that, their costs in that sense, will actually go up. And furthermore, Spectra is probably, and there are plans that suggest this, is just going to export the gas abroad. So that gas isn't even going to be consumed or in the United States or even enter the northeastern market. And so it makes a lot more sense to, if you're really concerned about energy costs, to invest in programs that can serve our energy better, as well as that will serve the grid here in the Northeast, such as by renewable energy programs and wind energy and solar panels and whatnot.
So how are we doing in terms of renewable energy sources in Massachusetts?
We're doing, there is tremendous growth, and there's a lot of support for what are known as green jobs that, sending people back to work, that constructing wind turbines, installing solar panels, and these are jobs that keep that money in the community, whereas instead we're bringing gas in from other states, and this major corporate behemoth is not really providing a lot of jobs to people here, and is taking those profits elsewhere. So having local jobs is much better for the economy as well as for the planet. And the last thing, the sort of angle that protesters are taking, and the thing that they're the most upset about, is that Massachusetts has to meet is legally bound by legislation that was passed in 2008 under the Patrick administration to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by measurable targets. It has to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, and these are gases like carbon dioxide and methane, those that trap solar radiation and heat the planet. It has to reduce these emissions by 25% by 2020 and by at least 80% by 2050. And by investing in new fossil fuel infrastructure, that's not really helping us meet those objectives at all. In fact, further imperiling the Baker administration's plan to build these pipelines and to finance their construction. 2 months ago, the state Supreme Court ruled that Governor Baker is not doing enough to set specific limits on the sources of greenhouse gas emissions here in Massachusetts. And last year, for the first time in many years, the emissions from power plants in the energy sector here in Massachusetts actually increased from the previous year. And that's not the direction that we need to go in, especially as a lot of these power plants and infrastructure projects are retiring. If we make an investment in a pipeline like this, that's going to be with us for decades. That's not the type of thing that you just turn off.
And that's just going to bring more of the methane into the environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything else that people should know about the march and the pipeline expansion project?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will definitely say that there is a lot of opposition to these plans across all political backgrounds. A few weeks ago, the state Senate passed an amendment to its energy bill by a vote of 39-0. So people of both political parties opposing Governor Baker's plan to add a tax to electric ratepayers' utility bills to finance this construction. So it has broad opposition. The Attorney General opposes it and says that we don't need new fossil fuel infrastructure projects, which come with a slew of human health and hazards and risks of explosions and contribution to climate change to meet our electric reliability needs. And, Massachusetts really stands at an energy crossroads. Either it can continue to invest in projects that are not good for our economy, don't help our planet, and imperil the futures of children and grandchildren, or it can move to a cleaner energy future.
That's great. Is there any way that people can get involved? And I know the march is going on over the weekend, but in the future, what can you do?
So this march is being planned by a coalition of different environmental and social justice groups, and two of the biggest leaders of this march are Better Future Project and 350 Mass for a Better Future. And 350 Mass for a Better Future is entirely volunteer-led. People can join at any time, and it's a statewide group of volunteers that have chapters all across the state that advocate for effective climate policy at the state level. So anyone can join those groups. There are meetings on a regular basis, and if they just Google 350 Mass for a Better Future, they will absolutely find contact information for people.
Great. We'll put the website up on the program. So
Great.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, of course.
Pipeline. You guys gonna join us for a while?